that this will be the first of many years, and I wish it wasn't the case. I wish we never had to do a vigil for Dia de los Muertos, but as long as it's happening, I hope that as a national network, we can come together and remember our migrants who have passed, because I don't want them to be just numbers. These are human beings with families. These are people with dreams. These are people that have lost their lives, not in the desert. I always say that the desert gives life. You know, if you ever come to the Sonoran Desert, you know, when we hardly have any water here, it's just phenomenal to see the vegetation in our biodiversity, and how despite this heat and below freezing temperatures in the winter evenings, how rich in biodiversity. So for me, the desert represents life. Unfortunately, at least in the Southwest, we have the deadliest area for migrants in the entire world, just here in the Southwest. But it's not the desert that kills. The desert is life. It is our immigration policies that kill. And so when we, you know, we're going to talk about that in the second part of the presentation. But in Tucson, we have been holding a tradition led by Coalición de Derechos Humanos for 20 years, where on Dia de los Muertos, November 2nd, we come together as a community and we read the names of all of the migrants that have passed on in our desert region. Unfortunately, and I have everyone's registration, email addresses, so I'm going to follow up today with sending you a list of the migrants that we have from this area. And unfortunately, we don't have it for other areas, and I'll explain why later. But you will have the names so that you can do your own vigil and your own altar in your community. And also on November 2nd at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will have our own virtual vigil where we will say the names of the migrants who have passed and then say presente. So please join us again on November 2nd. So this presentation is going to be two parts. The first part is going to be Albanora Martinez, a dear friend of mine, who will discuss the altar, the traditional elements of an altar, how we do it in Mexico. And we're only speaking about the Dia de los Muertos altar because we're both Mexicans and that's all we know. But if in your local community, you have a different ethnic group, a different culture, I encourage you to please, be multicultural in your approach and please feel free to do your own altar in a way that is culturally relevant. So after we do the altar presentation, that will be about 20 minutes. Then I will discuss the talking points that if you do a community vigil, you can address as part of your vigil. So let me introduce Dr. Albanora Martinez. And so she is a dear friend of mine that we've known each other and been in the movement together for at least, I don't know, now over 20 years for sure.
Over 20.
Yeah. So she is here in Tucson as well. And she's a retired professor at the University of Arizona. She is the author of several children, teen, and adult fiction and poetry books. And she is also an expert in Mexican folklore and does a lot of cultural events, music, poetry, theater around town. So she is really a true gift to our community here. So Albanora, if you want to just get started, the stage is all yours.
Yes, I am she, her, and ella. And I'm so happy to be here with you and so proud to show the way we set an altar. But as Alba said, you can make as many changes as you want. This is just a traditional one. And I'm going to explain how you set the elements, or how we set the elements, and the meaning of each one. So we first start the November the 1st at the evening for the little angels. And then we are going to set the altar for the angelitos. And so we have a small bread here, and we came in front of, we can have a cross, we can have a saint, or we can have any other representative object of the culture you are representing or you are honoring. And you have to face that of the object. Remember, this is a feast. It's not for sadness. It's a celebration for life. And bread means life, and also means communion. And we said it pointing to the 4 elements, because these rituals are from the ancient indigenous Mexican cultures, but also in syncretism with Christianity. So, you know, we have to remember that in Spain there were the dances of the death, and also the carpe diem, which was very important. So you do now, but celebrate today, because one day for sure you're going to die. So it's a celebration. So I have to point facing the object you choose for representing. I'm going to set it going through the 4 elements. It's also the 4 seasons, and also it's a cross. And then I'm dedicating it to the small migrants. They walk to a lot with their parents, along with the parents or the polleros. So today, you know, on the 1st November, we start with the little angels. And then for the little angels, we have traditional candy. I'm going to come here and see. They have this. This is a sugar sculpture, and is somebody dead is sitting on a coffin, and children devour this. They love them. And we also have the famous skulks with the names of the children. So we take our children to the marketplace, and we buy them for them, and they put their names. So first, we're honoring the children. I know not in every place in the United States or city you will find these skulks, but see, this one was made here in Tucson by a group of the University of Arizona students. I don't know where, but I think online they found the molds, and they made those. And these were made in a school, in an elementary school, but by children. So the first day, we're just going to have toys. We're going to have the sugar skulks, because children like it. We're just honoring children. Water, because they might be thirsty, but also it represents baptism. So it goes along with the salt. Both of them represent the baptism. And there we have lots of Mexican candies, traditional candies. And this was made here also by, you know, some scholars. And there are traditional toys for the Day of the Dead that are sold at the marketplace, and they're very popular. So the altar for the little angels needs to have those. Also, there is other toys like this. It used to work. And then the skeleton, if you with the thread, used to sit there. See, another one. And those are the little toys for the little angels. And this is more, sugar things commemorating the death. And this is another traditional toy. And well, sugar cane, that is there is, we use it and in many of in our meals. And this is an amaranth candy. Is put together with honey. It represents communion among the indigenous people in Mesoamerica. So they had communion too, as many of other cultures. They have the communion too. And well, a chocolate is a must because chocolate is originally from Central America and of course Mexico. And the chocolate is a must. So the first day of the 1st of November, you at evening you set this altar. It's going to stay there for 24 hours. Next day, you're going to continue with the altar, but then we are dedicating it also to the old, to the old people, to the migrants who cross the desert, and I'm going to represent them with these hats, because when you go to the desert, you find them all over the place. You find these things. We also find Mexican bags and bandanas. So this is for the November the 2nd. And then I have a bread for them too. And I'm going to go ahead doing the same thing. I'm going to point also the 4 cardinal points, and it represents the same: earth, life, communion too. And what is very interesting is in this bread, Dia de los Muertos bread, this is the navel, and those are the femurs. And that's the representation of their loved ones. Maybe I put the little shoe here to show. And also I have a small hat because children uses hats too. Then I keep going. We need candles. And then are going to be light. You're going to light them on the 2nd of November. You can have as much candles as you want.
Albanora, can the candles be any color, or do they have to be a
They can be any color. They can have saints if you want. They can be blank without anything, and you can have as many as you want. If your loved ones, the people you're honoring, in this case we don't know them because it's migrants, it's in general, but we assume they like coffee, so we're going to put some coffee for them, some mezcal or tequila or beer. If you're honoring a person, they like tequila, mezcal, beer, whiskey, you set it also on the table. and mole. Mole is very important because it's a meal for celebration. Also tortillas. Tortillas are very important for us. We have the bread there and tortillas. And well, this is another very important element. This is a squinkly dog. The squinkly dog used to walk with the merchants who walk from city to city. And well, those are like the origin of the Chihuahuas. And they walk with them. And they are supposed to bring the souls to the Mictlan. The Mictlan, sorry. The Mictlan is the Mictlan is the heaven for the indigenous religions in Mexico. So we always have a dog representing our ancestors. And if you don't find an squinkly, you can make it out of clay, or well, you can have any dog you have around. And then we can have bigger skulls because we are honoring all, the adults. So we can have that. And flowers. Flowers are very, 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 very important. The traditional flower of the Day of the Dead is the cempasúchil. In the United States, it is translated as marigold, but it's not the same. But you can use it. And because I couldn't find cempasúchil in Tucson, I'm in Tucson, by the way, but I'm going to find it later, but not now. It's too early. Well, this is I'm using it. These artificial flowers, but it will work. And then we're going to set them. I'm going to crown the squinkly, and then you can have as many flowers as you want. And if you don't find the cempasúchil, you can use another orange flowers, yellow flowers. Another element that is very important is herbs, the herbs. This is rosemary, because that's what I have in my garden. And because this represents healing and also life. So, okay, if you were here, I will ask you where to put it. So then at the end, you can be, changing the elements. So you will find a better place for them. The only thing that you won't change is the breath. The breath has to stay there. And the rest you can move around. So if you want to look better or more artistic, and then there are never too many flowers, because flowers are life, and you can have as many flowers as you want. I have a cross here, but you can have a saint also. We are representing the migrants with these elements. But if you're honoring somebody a loved one, then you have his picture there. And even sometimes they have clothes. If this person was a musician, you can put the guitar or the flute, something that will represent him. And also you can include all the food they loved. And in this case, well, we're having elements, because we don't know who they are, but you know, we are very sensible about them. Another element that it goes always on in an altar is the papel picado, because papel picado represents air. And I'm sorry, it's, you know, my table is very close to the computer, so you cannot admire. Yes, I have it here too. So papel picado is very, very important. So these are the elements that we use for setting an altar in Mexico, and here in Tucson too. And you can make your own. You can add whatever you really like, and you can change elements. And okay, so now maybe we have some time for questions. I don't know if Alba, do we have that sometimes for questions?
Thank you, Alanora. You know, as you can see that you can get as creative as you want with the altar. And, you know, us Mexicans have a very unique relationship with death. If you've seen Coco, the Disney, it is so beautiful. We are so proud of that movie, but it shows what our relationship to death is, that those who have passed on, we continue to honor them and remember them, and their life will always be important to them. And as you can see, this tradition and ritual is a synchronism between ancient indigenous practices in Mesoamerica, but also a synchronism with the Catholic culture. So it is, you know, Dia de los Muertos is and it's one of those holidays recognized by UNESCO as having world importance. And we do have a question from Nayeli Albanora.
Let me read it.
I can read it to you, si quieres.
Oh, yeah, sí.
Can you also use sage and palo santo?
Yeah, you can use, or I use oregano, sage, palo santo, cinnamon, you know, the cinnamon sticks, whatever you have handy, because that's what we do. Whatever I have this in my garden now, and I usually have oregano, but the oregano nowadays is not really good. But all the herbs you like to have, sage, whatever.
And pictures of you can
all the pictures you wanna add. You know, usually the last people, like let's say this is a family altar, so you are going to honor mainly the last people who die in your family, but you also can add the other people, and also you can ask your friends to bring their the pictures of their loved ones, this who pass, and you can add them. And because all the food, the candies, you're going to give them away, or you're going to eat them with the family or with the people who's coming over for visit or bringing you foods. Also, you know, you can put in the altar fruit. I didn't do that because here in Tucson we don't grow many things. But if you know, a family lives in a place where they grow calabaza and corn, pumpkin, corn. I don't put pumpkin because then they mixed it up with Halloween, but in the United States. But if you grow corn, or if you have apples, whatever you have, you can add there. I'm not in my home, I don't grow anything because it's too expensive in Tucson to grow things, and that's why I didn't add them. But I want to mention that you can add the fruit you want, mangoes, avocados.
And you will receive the names that we have of the migrants that have died in our part of the desert. I also encourage you to do something, an artistic representation, writing the names, or however. We don't have the pictures, so we have one picture.
Oh, yes.
but you can do something artistic to represent them.
Yes, because I don't have pictures. That is why I have the little shoe and the hats. Also, maybe the bandana too, and all kind of hats will do. Backpacks too, because that's what we find in the desert, backpack.
Thank you. We have one question. Do they need to be things or items you have in the home and not buy them? So
no, you can. I don't buy them because I have been collecting for years, and you can buy them, or you can if you have them at home, that's okay. I usually do what I have at home, but I have been collecting them. But if you don't want to spend money on buying them, just do with what you have. The bread is very important. I baked it. I baked this. And there are several recipes on the internet. And
if you can send us a recipe, because someone earlier asked about a recipe for pan de
okay, I'll take a picture of the recipes on my books, and there's several online, and for me, all are the same difficulty. To tell you the truth. I'm not a very good baker, but and in Tucson we buy it. But at this time of the month, I was calling all the bakeries, and they don't have it. So I have to bake it, but it's I don't know if it is going to be delicious. It has a lemon peel, orange peel, and if you can find online the flour of orange flour in liquid, it will be, but that is edible. You add it, and you will have a very good flavor. And they said it's easy to make, but it doesn't come out very well for me.
No, it looks beautiful. Thank you, Albanora. Thank you for this beautiful presentation. I learned a lot listening to you. Thank you. And there's two more comments. One is Kristen, the ED of El Paso has the names of people that have died in detention since 2004. If anyone is dedicating an altar to migrants that have died in detention, that is wonderful, wonderful. And Genesis has a suggestion. I think that bread could be a good way to tie in other cultures in your area. I completely agree. Add bread from other cultures. It is a universal thing that all cultures make their own bread. So thank you, Albanora.
One thing I would like, another thing, if you have something hard like this, like write on a paper all the names, and then hanging there all the names you have from the people, the migrants you want to honor. That would be a good idea too. But thank you very much for having me, and I hope they will be useful. Maybe if you need to make any questions, and you can send me questions at martinez.albanora@gmail.com. Can somebody write it down for me? So you're welcome if you have any questions. And thank you I'm honored being here. And just always remember, this is a live celebration. Mm-hmm. And we also have music, and we can dance and play our instruments, or just sing.
And for our purposes, so it's a celebration of life, of these migrant lives, and it's also a call to action for policy change. So that gives us a good transition. Carlos, if you can pull up the PowerPoint on the migrant deaths. Gracias, Albanora.
Yeah, also it could be a show of political resistance.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.
I don't know. We would give you a big applause if we were in person. Okay, so in this part of the presentation now, briefly, so I can get you all going with your day, is how do we talk about migrant deaths as part of this Dia de los Muertos Vigil and altar. As you can see, this is the altar that we do at the Tiradito Shrine. That is a very sacred space for us in Tucson, where we gather for advocacy events and when big things happen in our community. So this is the altar we set up last year, and as you can see, and I don't think all the candles are on display, but we do have a candle for every migrant. We also have over 3,000 crosses that have the name of each migrant. We are actually running out of space to store them. And so we've run across the problem of what do we do with so many crosses, and how do we, so we're actually commissioning. I received the grant to do an advocacy project where we're going to commission a local artist to do a sculpture that is we're going to use these crosses to do something in the city where it's going to remain permanently, and the lives of these migrants will not be forgotten. Okay, next slide. Okay, so honoring migrants who lost their lives in the journey to the United States. This woman is Renata Lopez, and I'm going to tell you a story about her. Renata passed away in June of this year. I had a couple of artists visiting, and we did a trip to the medical examiner's office. They have what's called the Missing Migrants Project, where they have the bodies of migrants that have not been identified. So as I was touring the medical examiner's office, the medical examiners took us to a place where they have the possessions of migrants that they found in the deserts. And I saw an ID with her name, Renata, and then I saw that she was from Misantla, Veracruz. As you can see how beautiful Misantla is in the background. I have been to Misantla, Veracruz. It's a tiny little town on the top of a mountain in Veracruz that is very difficult to get to. Actually, it has one of the most dangerous roads in the world to get out there, but I had been there for another art project I was working on. And so almost no one has heard of Misantla, Veracruz. And so when I saw her ID and I said, Misantla, I've been there. I told the medical examiner, has she been identified? Because even though they have her ID, the ID doesn't always belong with a body. Sometimes they have fake IDs, sometimes people take the IDs. And the medical examiner said, no, she has not been identified. And so I said, I have friends in Misantla. Is it okay if I contact them to go find the family to let them know that her body was found? And he agreed to that. So my friend went and knocked. He didn't know Renata, but he knew where the house was. And he went and knocked on her door. Her mom answered. And her mom, the family had been looking for her because she was an asylum seeker. She was someone that paid a coyote almost $9,000 to get her through the desert. So this is what happened. She paid $9,000, left Veracruz. And when she got through the border, in the old days, coyotes used to actually escort you through the border, then put you on a car and then take you, someplace else. They don't even do that anymore because of the surveillance technology. Now they guide you through a cell phone. And can you imagine in the desert being guided by cell phone? There's no streets, how do you know one cactus from the other? So that is what happens with most migrants that cross. They get lost and they're, they get disoriented. It all looks the same. The terrain is rough, the weather is rough. And in her case, within 13 hours of being in the desert, she passed on. So it was devastating for the mom because they couldn't find her. And so then her sister, who was waiting to be reunited, her sister was in in Chicago, I believe, waiting to be reunited with her, called me, her twin sister, and said, please explain what happened. And I said, they found her body. I think the medical examiner says that she passed on within 13 hours of being in the heat in June, which was about 104 degrees. And so I said, was she fleeing? How? And she said, yes, she was being persecuted. And I said, I wish I would have known, because I could have helped her, with the Title 42 exemptions. Please tell her family if they're also being persecuted, our organization can help. But I almost feel that the sister didn't trust me, because why would she? She didn't know who I was. All of a sudden, I send a man to go knock on her door, and they didn't even believe that someone can get them through the border, because as they know that the border is closed due to Title 42. So, I take this moment to just, when we talk about these issues, to just remember these are people. This instance, talking to the sister, and it really affected me. It sat with me for a long time. It was hard for me to even speak about it. And especially because Renata has a little daughter, as you can see, that is probably the same age as my daughter. So it was really, really hard for me. But we must always remember, their humanity, and no one comes by choice. No one, expects to die. They come based on need. And sometimes it is a matter of life or death. Next slide. Migrant deaths this year. It is very important that we do these vigils and these altars, because this year, fiscal year 2022, that just ended last month, has been the highest record number of migrants that have died in the southern border ever. Since we began recording deaths in the 90s, this year has been the deadliest, with over 800 migrants that have passed on in our southern border. We passed the record. We thought last year was the record. Last year was 566, and we have surpassed that number by over 200. And that is all because of our policies. I also want to highlight that if you heard, last month, the deaths are not just in Arizona. In Texas, we see a lot of it. And last month in Texas, 8 migrants drowned in the Rio Grande near Eagle Pass. So the migrants drowned, a lot of them in Texas, and in here in our desert, they pass away from either heat exhaustion or hypothermia. And then I also want to remember, because it has to stay in our historical memory. These things come in the news and then they go away, and then the next thing, but no, we have to have institutional memory of these things happening. And, June 27, the 53 migrants that were found dead of heat exhaustion in San Antonio when they were left trapped in a semi-truck trailer. That also happened this year. And I will send you the names of those migrants as well. But it has been the deadliest year. And that is why it is so important for us to do these vigils and altars. Next slide. So Humane Borders is an organization that is here in Tucson that takes water to the desert, that puts up water stations for migrants to find water so that they don't dehydrate, which that's a whole nother story too, because the militia groups, the Minutemen go and destroy those water, and even anti-immigrant people, they go and destroy those water tanks, and nothing is ever done criminally against them. For me, just, destroying water tanks should be equivalent to murder, because that's what it is. If people find water, they will live. But if you see this map, this is the map, as I mentioned, the Pima County Medical Examiner is a model for the whole country on recording migrant deaths. And they work in collaboration with Humane Borders. And as you can see, all the red dots are where the bodies are found. So here in Tucson, the majority of the bodies are found in Pima County jurisdiction. And that is where we see the greatest number of migrant deaths in the entire southern border. And that is here near Tucson. Next slide. But there is a problem in knowing how many migrant deaths are actually happening. These numbers, the 800 are only the ones, the bodies that have been found. But it's actually very difficult to find the bodies. First of all, the desert, the land is very vast. Often there's humanitarian groups that go out and put water. They're usually the ones that find the bodies, the organizations like Humane Borders or No More Deaths, people that just go out into the desert looking to help migrants that are in physical distress. But Border Patrol does not do search and rescue. I'll talk about that in just a second. But tracking of the migrant deaths is done by counties. It's not even done by states, and it's not even, there is no federal count because our federal government has not cared to keep a count of migrant deaths. If this was U.S. citizens dying in terrain like this, do you think they would absolutely start counting the bodies? But because they are migrants, they don't consider their lives worthy, and they don't even bother to track. Most of the times when bodies are left there, the animals will eat up the bodies, and then we won't even find them, or we'll find, a fragment of bone somewhere and not the entire body. And sometimes the majority of cases, the bodies are never found by the families. So when the counties, they hire a medical examiner, those are government positions. They're the ones that track this, but some counties don't have medical examiners at all. Texas is the worst. Texas has about 246 counties, I believe, and the majority of them do not have a systematic way of tracking migrant deaths. So we actually don't have a clear picture of how many deaths are happening in Texas. And CBP, Customs Border Patrol, does not even keep a count of migrant deaths. So yeah, you can move on to the next slide. So when, as I mentioned, it is our policies that kill our migrant community. And I just want to highlight one major one, which is prevention through deterrence. So this is intentional. All of this that is happening in our desert is by design. In 1994, our government implemented the prevention to deterrence policy. So what that meant was that the government would invest a lot of money in technology and in personnel in urban ports of entry. So, wherever the ports of entry, so that's where the majority is CBP, Border Patrol, technology is implemented there. And so the idea was, if we militarize it, and it really does look like a war zone there, because there's checkpoints, there's barbed wire, there's officials everywhere, there's surveillance technology. If you walk to our southern border, you will think you're in a war zone. And then can you imagine what it does to the psychology of people on the other side, or people that live on the border region? But the idea was that if you militarize, if you put a lot of officials in those urban ports of entry, then migrants are going to have no choice, because before, people used to attempt crossing through the ports of entry. And so the government said, if you militarize the ports of entry, then they're not going to have a choice. They're going to go to the desert, and then they're going to realize this is not habitable. If we cross, we're going to die. And they're going to be deterred from crossing. Well, it didn't work. People have no choice because they can't cross through ports of entries, and there's no lawful ways to cross. Then they go through the desert. So by design, the government knew that deaths would occur, and they called it prevention through deterrence. And of course, we talked about militarization of the border, and Title 42 has resulted in almost 2 million expulsions. That is the policy that says that asylum seekers cannot walk up to the ports of entry and request asylum. So if you can't, asylum is an international right. It is a human right. It is a legal right. But asylum seekers now can't even go request asylum at the port of entry. So they have no choice but to go through dangerous parts of the border. That's another reason that we are at record highs for migrant deaths. Next slide. The wall is I highlight this picture because this is in our Organ Pipe National Monument. This area of the desert is very precious, is beautiful. It's a national monument, and it is sacred land to the Tohono O'odham people. If you can see the saguaro cactus that was cut down, the Trump administration continued by the Biden administration because the wall is still being built. It used to be 18 feet, now it's 30 feet, and it's still being, is continued to be built by the Biden administration. But in this area, it was so tragic to see all the saguaro, which to the native people in our region, the Pascuayaqui and the Tohono O'odham, the saguaro is like brother and sister to them. And the Yaqui, believe that God lives in the saguaro. So can you imagine how devastating it is to see all of the saguaro being cut, and not even, there wasn't even an attempt to replant the saguaros. They just let them thrown, because to me, that also represents bodies and life that has been wasted. But the actual, the wall now, the 30-foot wall that is also destroying the entire ecosystem, the sacred lakes are being dried out in Organ Pipe National Monument. But it is also in itself causing deaths. And Border Patrol is refusing to keep account of the injuries and the deaths caused by people trying to go through the wall, jump the wall. This year in this, it makes me very upset. This year in Douglas, Arizona, a woman, the coyotes try to help her come over the 30-foot wall. Her clothing got stuck on the wall, and she ended up hanging upside down and died. And it took many, many hours. And how does this happen? It took many, many hours for Border Patrol to come and recover her body or even rescue her. She had passed on. But when you have that much infrastructure, that much personnel, and they're not engaging in search and rescue, not even in the wall, I mean, what does that say about our system? Next slide. Border Patrol does not engage in search or rescue, although they will not tell you that because, they have their own PR team. But there is a very important 3-part report that was done by Coalición de Derechos Humanos and No More Death. And they studied how often Border Patrol actually engaged in search and rescue. 63% of the search and rescue calls that they got, they did not respond to, and 40% they absolutely refused to show up. So our Border Patrol is only there to criminalize our migrant community. And what they should be doing is engaging in search and rescue, but they don't. And, the desert is large, the terrain, and they just really don't even bother to go to parts of the deserts, even when they are told that people need help there. Next slide. So, as we do these altars, these vigils, it's not enough to just focus on the pieces of the altar. I believe, it's beautiful, but we need to demand for change. We need to use, if we're remembering migrants, if we're doing especially anything public, we need to demand that this stop. And, and what can you demand? And prevention through deterrence policy. That's the first most thing that needs to happen. We need to create some sort of a worker visa program where workers can come and work on documented, where they can seek visas. We need to stop funding Border Patrol. Their annual budget is $5 billion, and they're not even able to staff as many people as they want. Right now, they have a deficit of 1,200 positions that they cannot fill. Like, they obviously don't need that much money, that much personnel. The federal government needs to take accountability of the deaths that are happening in the desert, and they need to stop hiding that information from us. They need to keep account. We need to do away with the wall and absolutely stop wall construction. I believe that during the Biden administration, we've seen more construction than we did in the Trump administration. And we need to open up the asylum process where people can walk up to the border and request asylum and not have to go through dangerous parts of the desert, with coyotes and other criminal organizations. So I ask that you please, make a call to action, that we request for change, that we remember these migrants, and that they never be just numbered to us. And so I will end there. We are almost out of time, but if there's any questions, I can take some questions. So I am going to follow up with an email with the PowerPoint, the recording of this presentation, a list of the names that we have so far of migrants that have passed, and then also the handout from Albanora that have all the elements written out of the altar. And please, we want to see pictures. If you do an altar in your home, at your organization, if you do a vigil, it is really important that we uplift each other, and that we raise awareness, and that we keep historical memory of our advocacy work. Well, thank you all for caring, and please follow up with us with pictures. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and stay tuned. I hope that you're all able to be there for our Dia de los Muertos online vigil with a candle, and please feel free to share it widely for us to be together, at least virtually, and remember these migrants. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.